Hello, welcome to my new channel. This is going to be a place where I just discuss new and current movies and maybe some older movies. But as opposed to a lot of film criticism you see on YouTube, obviously you don't need another guy just either tearing a movie apart or being over complimentary towards it. This isn't really going to be like those types of YouTube sites. It's not going to be delving deeply into the movie making or anything like that. It's just going to be me saying, I like this movie and here's some reasons why. So with that in mind, I'd like to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home, the new Marvel movie that just came out. I think in talking about this movie, you have to think about a few different things. Sony, Marvel, everyone's interest in this property, as well as the two previous Spider-Man movies from John Watts. And what I really admire about this movie is its commitment to almost like a humanist ideal. And by that I mean his commitment to actually preserving life. So many of the Marvel heroes actually kill pretty freely, and yet somehow don't get flack for it, as opposed to many of the DC movies. But in this case, we see from Homecoming that Tom Holland's Spider-Man is actually doing his uttermost best to preserve life and actually not kill, and to try to save and redeem the villains if he can. We saw that with Michael Keaton's Vulture, how he went out of his way to try to talk him down from the ledge, so to speak, and then ultimately to save him from blowing up in his suit. So I think they really took that concept and they really ran with it in this one. In a pretty brilliant way, or what would have been Amazing Spider-Man Part 3. I'm sure Amy Pascal's plan was to do a Sinister Six type concept for that movie. But again, you can see how John Watts has really sort of leveled up his filmmaking. And that's not to say that either of the previous Spider-Man movies were bad or anything. They were really good as well. But those were definitely more like, almost like teen comedies. Hijinks, very light tone, not really a sense of danger. Everyone's going to make it out of this alive and okay. You can definitely see the tone shift here and almost like an evolution of the filmmaking style, where now we have, some pretty severe stakes, and some life lessons being learned that are, I think, almost in contrast to, you could look at the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, where I think in that case, they really hit you over the head with the lessons of those movies. And in this case, you really see a Spider-Man who's, learning again about consequences. And of course, the iconic line, with great power comes great responsibility, is actually spoken in this one, which had only been previously alluded to. I would definitely say that this is more of a drama than a comedy, although it does have a lot of comedic touches. And we really leave him in a place that's more similar to his comic book counterparts. He's no longer Iron Lad or whatever people are complaining about. Him depending too much on Iron Man or the Avengers or any of the larger Marvel universe. We see by the end of the movie that he's given up the love of his life, his best friend, his entire life, and now he's basically anonymous. People just know him as the masked vigilante Spider-Man, and not really Peter Parker as Spider-Man. So at the start of this film, we very much are placed back in the world of, Far From Home. You see the immediate reaction to, the Mysterio reveal of Spider-Man's identity and how that's kind of impacting his life, and then ultimately bleeds over into the lives of his friend and his girlfriend in negative ways. He tries to get a spell performed to, reverse everything that happened. And then I would say that's when the film really shifts from, again, the previous two movies to, a much deeper, much more complex film style, film action, however you want to think about it. We get the introduction of Alfred Molina's Dr. Octopus in what's a pretty cool action scene. I don't think anything's really going to one-up any of the action scenes in Spider-Man 2 that they had between Dr. Octopus and Spider-Man. But, they did a pretty good job of quickly, what are we dealing with now? So we quickly become aware that, you get a quick hint of the Green Goblin. You hear the laughter and see a Goblin bomb go off. And then we have Doctor Strange again corralling up all the different villains that have started to emerge through different portals. related to the spell they cast, which was anyone who knows that Spider-Man is Peter Parker is somehow drawn into this world. So at that point, we really are firmly into, obviously they never say the Sinister Six or anything like that, and there's actually only 5 of them. I think probably everyone in the audience was kind of wondering, like, is there a secret villain? Is there going to be another villain? And I'm actually really glad that they showed restraint in that case. They didn't try to force in another villain where it wouldn't really have fit. So they just left it with the, previously established villains. We get, again, Alfred Molina as Dr. Octopus, who I will say, when he was playing Dr. Octopus, he did get a little grating to me at times, just like really overplaying, like, I'm so smart, I'm so evil, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, we get it. Let's move on from that. Then we are quickly introduced back to Electro and Sandman in a pretty cool action sequence where, we do get sort of a new suit, which is just Spider-Man turns his suit inside out because there's some green paint that somebody spilled on it. So he wears a black suit, but it's really just the inside-out version of his suit. And he confronts Sandman and Electro, and they kind of team up. Sandman thinks that it's his Spider-Man, the one that he ultimately, reconciled with by the end of Spider-Man 3. And then they are all, put back in the little jail that Doctor Strange is working on. We get the Lizard, who is also quickly captured by Doctor Strange off camera. And then we are reintroduced to Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin. Another really clever move. I don't know who the mad genius was who thought of this, but he pretty immediately breaks his mask. So goodbye, terrible Power Rangers mask from the early 2000s. And for the rest of the film, obviously at some point he does revert back into his Goblin persona. He is actually just wearing his Willem Dafoe's face is the Goblin mask, essentially. A lot of people have been saying it over the years, why didn't they just use his face? It's already, and no disrespect to Willem Dafoe, who's a brilliant actor and seems like a really nice man, but he does have a very Goblin-esque face. And they do have some fun with Spider-Man being like, what, he's a little elf? He's a green elf? Because it is kind of a silly character. So we do get reintroduced to Norman Osborn, who in this case seems like he's trying to reform, trying to help Spider-Man. We get the hilarious line, I'm something of a scientist myself, obvious callback to the first movie. And then we get into the crux of the film, which is Aunt May convincing Peter Parker and Spider-Man, instead of taking the easy way out, which would just be to send all these characters back. It's revealed, because I guess all the villains have sort of genre knowledge, genre savvy, of what has happened to the other characters in the previous movies. So we get things like Dr. Octopus knows what happened to Green Goblin, and then the Sandman knows that both of the other two died. And then, of course, we get the Andrew Garfield characters who also are aware of their fates. So essentially every villain that they've captured has at some point died at the hands of Spider-Man, or, attacking Spider-Man, killed themselves, or, died saving the city in the case of Dr. Octopus and Spider-Man 2. But the point is that in one way or the other, they have met their demise, and if they're to be sent back at the point they were plucked out, they will die again. And this, of course, puts Peter Parker, Tom Holland, into sort of a moral quandary of, is he going to let these characters die? He doesn't really know them. He doesn't really owe them anything, but they are still human. I did also like the touch. I don't really know if this is from the comics as well, but definitely from the Spider-Man PS4 game. We get Aunt May is working at Feast, so she has a lot of compassion for these kind of broken people. Willem Dafoe is kind of like a vagrant at that point. And they have this brilliant touch, which is that he's just wearing like a purple hoodie over his green outfit, essentially, emulating his classic Green Goblin look. So at that point, we are kind of using like a little hand-wavy magic tech, which is just, the suit-making machine from the previous movie is now capable of doing a lot more. So essentially they use it to try to find cures, try to solve whatever dilemma, whatever science accident, and we do get several hilarious jokes about, Electro fell into a tank of electric eels, and that's how he became the Electro, which is pretty funny because, all of these origin stories are pretty ridiculous. Stanley just radioactive plus science accident, and now you have a new villain. So we have a voltometer that's trying to, suck the juice out of Electro, turn just back into a human. We have Tom Holland trying to make a cure for Green Goblin, try to depower him as well. We're trying to make a chip to take out Dr. Octopus's, evil AI. Try to turn Kurt Connors back from the lizard into a human, which I would have loved if they had used the actor from the Sam Raimi movies, who had been waiting for like 4 movies to try to play the lizard, but they never actually let him. It would have been hilarious if the lizard had turned back into that actor instead of Rhys Ifan, even though it wouldn't have made sense. And then for the Sandman to turn back into human as well. It's very, very hand-wavy, very science magic, but, there are 2 brilliant minds of Norman Osborn and Peter Parker who you could hypothesize would be able to fix some of those things. So here, of course, we have the setup for the major drama of the film. Again, I did say this is a drama, which we remember a comedy ends with a marriage, sometimes, or it's just funny, and a drama usually ends or has a death in it that propels the action forward. So we have a very touching moment where Dr. Octopus is successfully cured. Alfred Molina gets to revert back to his good form. It's very touching. He thanks Peter Parker graciously. He's glad to have his life back since he was being controlled by the tentacles, essentially. And this, of course, spurs the Green Goblin's transformation back from Norman Osborn back to the dark side. It gets very vicious very quickly. A lot of the villains just vanish or leave. Dr. Octopus tails out of there. Sandman leaves. The lizard, I think, is trapped in a van. We also have, throughout the movie, J. Jonah Jameson, played again by J.K. Simmons brilliantly, just kind of constantly mucking things up for Peter Parker or implicating him in crimes. So once again, they're going to try to expose Spider-Man at this penthouse, which is Happy Hogan's penthouse. And this is where, we really get the best Willem Dafoe Green Goblin that we've seen at all up to this point. Obviously he was really great in the original Spider-Man movie as well, but this is just like a really more well-conceived version of the character, more closer to the comics. He's very brutally attacking Spider-Man, launching him through floors and ceilings and just, not holding anything back, just like kicking the crap out of him, essentially. And this ultimately culminates in him attacking Aunt May and Peter Parker with one of his goblin bombs. And I think by the end of the movie, we actually have some dialogue taken directly from the comic arc, the night Gwen Stacy died, after he kills Gwen Stacy, because this attack, of course, culminates in the death of Aunt May, which I will say is brutally stark, brutally depicted. Kind of reminded me of the Buffy episode The Body, in a way. Just, very realistic. You can definitely see shades of Tom Holland's reaction to Tony Stark's death in this. It's very much the same thing. I think it was a very painful moment for pretty much everyone in the audience. Marissa Tomei's kind of been like a secret MVP of these movies, even though she hasn't really been in them that much, especially the second one she was barely in. But, her light presence, she's just a good character. And she gets to deliver the iconic line, with great power comes great responsibility. And in this sense, it's really earned. Tom Holland really plays it perfectly. Peter Parker's learning, a life lesson that the Lizard also kept warning him about. Consequences will happen. Doctor Strange warning him about as well. You can't just do things frivolously. You can't just be this like goofy teen character who's like not worried about what's going to happen. You have to like actually become this Spider-Man that he wants to be. So with her death, he's again sent into a dark place. This movie all along had kind of been flirting with One More Day, Brand New Day, whatever those plot arcs are, which of course do also involve the potential death of Aunt May. We also have Back in Black, which did also involve Aunt May getting shot and killed. So, they're drawing from a lot of references. Also the Sony game also includes the death of Aunt May in similar circumstances. So, they're really pushing this plotline forward. We don't really know that much about the Uncle Ben of this universe or what the circumstances of his death are. It's kind of implied that a similar circumstance as in the other origins, but maybe he died of some other cause. In any case, this is the death that's really important in this universe to this Peter Parker. that will inspire him to, be heroic, to be the hero that everyone needs him to be and wants him to be. So, it's a very sad, very touching scene, but then they follow this up with more lightness, more comedy, which is, we've been saying that his friend Ned Leeds may be magic, and he has the sling ring because they trapped Doctor Strange, which is also a really awesome sequence. Him fighting in the mirror universe and getting trapped thanks to geometry, which is hilarious. So now Ned is able to open portals. He actually says, "I want to see Peter Parker," or something to that effect. And this, of course, leads to our two big cameos, our secret cameos, which everyone already knew about by the time the movie came out, which is, of course, of Andrew Garfield, who is kind of also the MVP of this movie, and Tobey Maguire, who I think is playing more of a subdued, more sober version of the Peter Parker character. He's obviously the older, probably has faced more loss than we've seen in the three movies that were made. They make a joke that his outfit's that of a youth pastor, which is pretty spot on. And you can also think about, Tobey Maguire's real life, which, a lot more people are aware of how nefarious he kind of is in real life. Not that pleasant a dude. So I think he's trying to make amends as best he can. And he still does play a fairly good Peter Parker / Spider-Man, just very humble, G. Willikers, classic Peter Parker. But you really get the sense that Andrew Garfield's trying to make up for, he really loves the character. He is a big fan, separate from his performance in the movies. I think when he got cast, it was his dream come true, probably. And he was never really given the best material to work with, particularly Amazing Spider-Man 2, which is kind of like the nadir of all these movies. The reason they had to reboot it, even though there had been talks of just like intermingling the universes. So yeah, he's getting the chance to make up for all that, and he's really using it to the best of his abilities. Being very light, very funny, very charming, lots of good jokes, and also lots of pain. He's clearly been deeply affected by the death of Gwen Stacy in his universe. He makes the reference that he's stopped holding his punches back. Whether that means he kills or just badly maims the people he captures is never really made clear. And I don't know if they really follow that plotline as much as they should have with that sort of implication. But, again, he does really carry that portion of the film, just his interactions with all the other characters. Lots of really nerdy in-references to various Spider-Man plotlines, from the movies or the comics. Just the idea that everyone who's friends with Spider-Man eventually dies. Just the idea that the loves of his life are very tumultuous. Gwen Stacy died. MJ had the whole thing in Spider-Man 3 where she kind of left Peter Parker, and then maybe they work things out in between. A lot more, sciencing, hilarious jokes about, the organic web shooters that Tobey Maguire has and none of the other ones have, because it's a pretty disgusting idea that I think James Cameron just threw in when he was going to do the Spider-Man movie. And yeah, a lot of really good interplay. At some point, Andrew Garfield calls them brothers, and that's basically what they are, kind of like triplets or something of the same character. And what's really notable about all these versions of Peter Parker, and you can even think of Enter the Spider-Verse, is that he is just like a really noble, solid guy who is using his mind and his powers for the betterment of mankind, to save people, to rescue people. So he's just a very, empathetic, sympathetic character, which is why, again, he's been so popular for all these years, from the 1960s to now. Like a 60-year run, basically. So from there, the pace really doesn't let up until the end of the movie. This all leads up to, they put out a press release through J.J. Jameson's company, basically challenging all the villains. We're going to push the button on the MacGuffin box and send you all back to universes where you'll die. If you want to come get it, we're all at this, Statue of Liberty that's been set up previously in, I think, What If and the Hawkeye show. So it's basically the Statue of Liberty with Captain America's shield on it. And this is like the big action sequence, which I will say, aside from the Green Goblin action sequence, which I thought was really good, for some reason the action in this movie didn't really do that much for me. I thought it was perfectly good in the other two movies as well. A lot more tech, a lot more, techie villains, but and this one is fine. It's like, again, not my favorite. But you do get really good bits with the Spider-Men working together. Tom Holland has had the most group experience, if we're, pretending to forget about James Franco. as the new Goblin, working with Spider-Man in Spider-Man 3. But, they have to learn how to work together, use their spider tingle, use their webbing, kind of follow each other's lead, really focus on which villain they're going to tackle next. And you get a lot of, again, really touching moments. You get Sandman getting turned back into a human. He's not really that much of a villain to begin with. He just wanted to be, reunited with his daughter. So he and Tobey Maguire get a nice little moment. You get one little sting from the Danny Elfman music. I would have really loved if when all the three Spider-Men were swinging in, if you had had the full blaring Danny Elfman soundtrack. But again, I think that showed the restraint of the directors and writers and all the other people involved in making this film, of just saying, this is Tom Holland's Spider-Man story. The other two are support characters. We're not going to try to change the focus of what this movie is all about. They're really helping him. They're helping him deal with the loss of Aunt May. Telling him about the people they have lost, Uncle Ben and Gwen Stacy. And even though this movie has a ton of characters, again, it really is a very personal story, which again is all in service of the film. You already know the knowledge, if you've seen all the other Spider-Man movies, of who the other villains are and what they're about, so you don't need to waste too much time of setting them up again. You can kind of just launch into it. So yeah, you get Lizard getting turned back into human, you get Dr. Octopus comes back to help them out again, and then finally Norman is the only one left, and Spider-Man has to just... And this is probably the darkest moment of the film, which is just that Tom Holland is actually just going to kill him. He's kind of been lying to the other ones. He's gonna get revenge for Aunt May's death. Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker has told him, I actually did end up accidentally killing the mugger who killed Uncle Ben, but it didn't really get me anything. And of course Andrew Garfield, we see, has also been dealing with all this loss and pain. Hasn't really gotten him anywhere either. They're both just in cycles of misery in a way. So it's really fitting that Tobey Maguire is the one who stops Tom Holland from killing Green Goblin with his own glider again, like what happened in the first movie. They don't even say anything, which I also thought was a very nice subtle touch. It's just the looks. You can just tell, hey, you don't do this, you don't want to become like I did. You're the best of us in a way. Shades of Miles Morales again. We do also get a hilarious joke with Electro, who got powered up by the Tony Stark arc reactor. When he eventually gets captured and turned back, he says, and I love that they included the Electro mask, that was really clever as well. He basically says, growing up in Queens, poor, etc., etc., I always thought that you were black under the mask, which is, again, a very nice nod to Miles Morales. I did kind of hope that they would somehow sneak in Miles Morales in some way or form, in some shape or form, even animated version, I don't know what crazy thing they're thinking of, but I think they are still thinking about that character for the future. It just shows that the filmmakers haven't forgotten that they set him up. In Homecoming, Donald Glover did play the Prowler, Uncle Aaron. So Miles Morales does exist in the MCU somewhere. They just don't know when or how or if they're going to bring him in, or if they're just going to fold in the Spider-Verse stuff, which I would also be perfectly fine with. That was a really great interpretation of the character. So yeah, eventually you do get, like I said earlier, Willem Dafoe delivering some of the Green Goblin's most iconic lines about how he let Aunt May die and all this and other stuff, really goading him. Again, I think Willem Dafoe did a really amazing job being the primary villain. If you do look at the comics, Dr. Octopus is generally the leader of the Sinister Six, but, they kind of subverted that here by having him be, really taken out of the equation very early on, and just having the focus be on the other remaining villains. So, we do get all the villains are turned back into the human forms, which again is a really great humanist message, that even if somebody is a monster, maybe they can still be reformed and reached at some point in some way. So that's a really good message and a great message for Spidey. He's a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, not like a murderer, not like a BVS Batman or something. He isn't just somebody who, shoots his villains or something. He's not the Spider-Man noir or anything like that. He's somebody who does his best to capture and prevent the loss of life. So that's all really well done. So ultimately we do get, one more hint of threat, which is the universe is still breaking down because of this spell. Sending all the villains back didn't quite do it. Again, a very touching scene with all the three Spider-Men kind of hugging, and I completely forgot. We also get Andrew Garfield making up for, not being able to save Gwen Stacy by saving the new Mary Jane, or not Mary Jane, the new MJ, from falling to her death, and a hilarious scene of Ned, floating down with Doctor Strange's cape, which is an awesome image. So he gets Andrew Garfield's, touching, too much crying from him, I thought, too, as well. But it was very touching that he got to make up for that, very impactful death that he experienced. So ultimately we do get, it does become one more day, ultimately. Peter Parker has to make the adult decision, not the easy choice. He wanted to make all these excuses, all these wait, I want these people to remember my identity, etc., etc. Now he just says, make everyone forget who I am. Peter Parker's no longer Spider-Man. Spider-Man's just an honest person, and all my friends forget who I am as well. Which Doctor Strange does. Again, I don't know why this part didn't quite work for me as well as I thought it would have. I love books like His Dark Materials or any sort of star-crossed lover sort of thing. I'm a sucker for that sort of stuff. For some reason, it didn't quite work out for me in this case. It was fine. It was kind of a little bit obvious, but what are you gonna do? It is what they were gonna do. So essentially, reboot the universe. Nobody knows who Peter Parker is. Eventually they'll get him back with Zendaya, obviously. And I should say that all supporting cast was also really good. Everyone brought their A game. Even Jon Favreau had some very touching moments throughout the film. But by the end, you do have Spider-Man ditching all his gear. No one can know he had connections to Iron Man anymore. So we get the standard original cloth, a really cool looking blue. In one final swing through the city, you glimpse the Hawkeye Avengers Memorial, which is a nice touch. It's just a really awesome way to finish the film. We're back where we started. This has all been one 3-arc origin story to get him back to, college age, living in a crappy apartment, struggling for money, just has his powers and his suit and nothing extra fancy. Eventually he'll probably develop, again, the impact webs and all that stuff, but it will come from him, not from some suit that is just gifted to him. So that solves complaints that people had them about the various suits he had in the previous movies, and it's just great to see him, taking inspiration from the other Spider-Man to bring his suit back to the original, blue and red, the iconic look. I'd have to watch this movie again. I didn't get quite a good look at it, but I think it is just the classic, Steve Ditko design, just the iconic, the most accurate. Even with the Andrew Garfield movies, that was very much drawing more from the Ultimate Spider-Man look. So this is just the classic, 70s, 80s John Romita, Steve Ditko look of Spider-Man, which I thought was amazing. So, I'm really excited to see what they do with the character moving forward. Having said that, if they just wanted to stop doing Spider-Man movies entirely, Sony's never going to do that, but this was a really great place to leave it. All the implications about the other universes, great. I, of course, am really anticipating the Into the Spider-Verse 2 sequels, so, I'm there for that as well. I just don't really see what else they could do with the live-action character, besides moving over to Miles Morales fully. So I'd be interested to see what they do going forward. Obviously, Sony's probably also interested in divesting him of all his MCU connections, so they can just keep making Morbius and Venom movies. And a hilarious post-credit stinger where Tom Hardy's Venom gets immediately sucked back to his universe. But maybe the symbiote left a little pod there to wreak mayhem. I don't know what they're going to do with that. And of course, we're getting the Morbius movie, which, I don't know, looks kind of awful to me, but I could be wrong. So yeah, I give this movie all the stars. People say this a lot, but I don't even think it was just a good movie for comic book movies. I thought it was just a good movie in general. It had the dramatic stakes, it had the really good acting, it had sacrifice, it had great messages about consequences, and really pushing that responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility message forward in an impactful way. Really touching deaths. Yeah. I would definitely recommend this movie. Maybe don't run out to the theaters. There is a lot of danger out there. But if you do, maybe go see it in IMAX, because that's how I saw it. It was a pretty great experience. I also hear that 4DX has some screen extending things, which is kind of cool. Yeah, and that's all I had to say about it. So yeah, of all the Spider-Man movies, I think this did a really good job of kind of correcting a lot of the flaws of the previous one, or sandpapering over some of the flaws. Pretty funny jokes to Venom from Tobey Maguire. And yeah, whatever they're going to do forward, I think it'll probably be with the new creative team. I think John Watts is going to go on to do the Fantastic Four, which should be amazing as well if he comes with the same level of reverence as these movies. And again, he's clearly been leveling up as a filmmaker. I did think it was a little strange that they pretty immediately dropped the Mysterio, his Spider-Man a killer thing, but what are you going to do? That would kind of swallow up the whole film if that's what they focused on. So it's probably a good thing that they just kind of moved on from that. Okay, so that was my review of Spider-Man No Way Home. A really good movie. If you feel unsafe going to theaters, just go see it on home video eventually in a few months, and it should be a blast as well.